So I'm a huge fan of the Oracle of Omaha, as he's known, Warren Buffett, one of the greatest investors in the world. He's had a cumulative return of 20.1% between 1965 and 2021. When he started his fund, though, in the 60s, he was returning over 50% per year. And he's had like a decade, I think it was in the 70s, he returned over 30% for a decade, which is absolutely astounding, right? And he's got a secret that I think you probably have not heard of about what makes him successful as an investor and what can make you more successful as an investor. It's not what you think, it's not how smart you are, but it's actually this one thing that he says that's really, really critical. So I'm going to go over this in 3 simple, easy steps. We're going to do, we're going to share a little bit and give some thoughts on what you can do. Let's jump into it. All right, so let's jump into it here. Disclaimer, I am not your financial advisor. There's no financial advice here. When you think of Warren Buffett, what do you think of? Do you think of a superhero? I mean, sometimes when I think about some of these amazing people, it feels like, thinking about Jesus or something, like he's half man and half God. Like it's like an unfair advantage, right? If somebody has a natural disposition to be able to do all this stuff, right? But I want you to step back for a second and see yourself in the same way that Buffett sees himself, because he says, not how smart you are. And so I just want to put that out there. But he says the single most important thing is this one thing, and it's the word temperament. And what actually is a temperament? Well, a temperament's defined as a person or animal's nature, especially as it permanently affects their behavior. So if you lose your crap every time something bad happens in life, you're probably not going to be a very good investor. And that's what happens. A lot of people, they buy high and they sell low because they panic, right? And maybe you can relate with that. I was an investment advisor, and a lot of investment advisors' job is just simply to manage people's emotions, right? They're panicked, they're freaking out, they're looking for somebody to hold their hand. And that's what kind of the masses need, is to just try to have somebody help them not to sell at the bottom. But Warren Buffett has this quote. He says, the most important quality for an investor is temperament, not intellect. You need a temperament that neither derives pleasure from being with the crowd or against the crowd, right? So he's saying you don't have to be the smartest person in the room. He said you just got to be able to manage yourself, and you have to be able to be patient. His partner, Charlie Munger, these guys are like the best quote guys. I mean, they come up with just these awesome quotes. But Charlie Munger, his partner many years, he says this. He says, the big money is not in the buying and selling, but in the waiting. It's in the waiting. It's not in the buying. It's not how many transactions you can do. It's not, hey, I just got to do something right now. And you might feel that pressure. I've got to just take advantage of everything right now and do everything I can. It's like, no, it's actually in the waiting. And Jim Rogers, who I met recently, you can see this picture here of Jim. Looks like I surprised him or something. I saw him at a conference. Really nice guy. Awesome. I've read some of his books, a venture capitalist. He's got a bunch of books. He partnered with George Soros years ago. They kind of went different ways politically. Soros went very left and Rogers went very right. But anyway, very nice guy. He said this, and I've heard George Gammon talk about this as well, said that, this is my investment philosophy. I sit at my desk and I wait. And when I see a pile of money across the room, I go over and I pick it up, and then I come back and I sit at my desk and I wait. And so all of these people all of these 3 uber successful investors have said it's in the waiting. You make money in the waiting. You make money when you're patient. You make money when you're doing, but that's not obviously an easy thing. So when the stock market crashes, and there's the term blood in the streets, right? When you hear blood in the streets, that's a good time to consider what it looks like to get involved in maybe start investing. Or if things are crashing, is it a buy sign, like to maybe buy more rather than look at selling? So I'm going to talk to some encouraging things, as maybe you lose your cool, maybe you're like me, and temperament is like, man, I don't always feel like I have the best temperament, right? I can get impatient and all this stuff. I've got some tips that'll be really encouraging for you. Okay, so can you change your temperament? I know Warren Buffett, he's like the Iceman. He can be so calm when things are crashing, but we all have triggers, right? We all have things that push us and make us be triggered. So how do you actually manage that, and what does that look like? Well, Carol Dweck wrote this great book, and it's called Growth Mindset. And she said there's 2 types of people, right? There's the people that when something bad happens, we feel like it's a defining moment, right? If I fail in school or if I fail in something, that means I'm a failure, right? And that's a fixed mindset, or that, I'm either born with this talent or I'm not. But the more they learn about it, is that more about talent and more about people that are highly successful and just have done amazing things with their life, they've learned that it's not something they're born with. It's something they've spent thousands of hours or tens of thousands of hours, as the 10,000 hour rule says, doing this particular thing or learning about it. So it's the idea of having a growth mindset, saying, okay, well, I haven't been able to manage my temperament well. I've lost my crap every time the market crashes, right? And how can I kind of have some strategies to go through that when the market crashes again, or what can I do? And so, I think one thing is called self-soothing. And what that means is when something bad happens, this sounds really simple, and it sounds a little bit, like with a therapy session. But when they talk about investor psychology, right? This is investor psychology. So this is a very practical tool you can use when things are not going your way in investment, is you can tell yourself, hey, it's going to be all right. It's going to be okay. Maybe it went from $100 to $50, and yeah, I've lost 50% of my money. But does the deal make sense to buy more? Because that's the stuff that great investors do. They don't look at, oh, things go down, my gosh, I got to panic, I was wrong. They'll say, well, maybe I'm still right. If the investment fundamentals are still there, maybe it makes sense to load the truck up and buy more. And that's how people make a lot of money. But they're able to manage their own temperament. They're able to manage their own psychology. So I encourage you to do that. The other thing I'll say is that when something bad happens in your investing, the tendency is to call a friend, right? Call a friend, or just to get in your head and just get negative. Well, who is it you're calling? Are you calling Chicken Little, who's, oh my gosh, I feel the same way, this guy is falling, this is terrible, whatever? Or are you going to call somebody, like Calm Charlie or Serene Susie, right? Who are going to say, hey, it's all right. I understand this happens, whatever. But a lot of it really comes down to who we surround ourselves with. I quote this often, Jim Rohn, the great personal development coach. He said this, that you're the average of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. So think about in those moments who you need, who's going to support you in that. And then the last thing I wanted to say on this topic on temperament is to study the great investors, right? I'm a fan of Warren Buffett. I'm a fan of Charlie Munger. I'm a fan of Jim Rogers. There are a lot of great folks out there that have been exactly where you're at, and that when you're in the moment when, I don't know what to do here, if you can think about what these guys have done or what they would do in that situation, it may allow you to tap into some of their strength, right? They almost become like a Napoleon Hill from his book, Think and Grow Rich, the classic book. If you haven't read it, it's amazing. Said that, he would kind of almost like sit and have his cabinet, right? He'd have, George Washington and all these other great, Thomas Edison, all these great leaders, and he would have them just in his mind, like in a room, and he would basically just almost kind of draw strength from like his board of directors, right? So education, who you surround yourself is important. Learning from these great investors is great. Warren Buffett's got a great book, or there's a book about him called The Snowball. It's about his life, it's a long book, but it's amazing. Highly recommend that. Sam Zell, Jack Schwager, they write investment books. They're awesome. Education is so important. So educate yourself, surround yourself with great minds. My goal for 2022 is to read 60 books this year. I'm on my way to that. And I encourage you just to really stay the course and follow your investment thesis and learn. So just with all of this, the number one thing Warren Buffett says is to manage your temperament or grow your temperament, have the ability to rely on, hey, I'm going to actually look at maybe buying more when things go down rather than panic and sell, which is what 80% of people do. And that's why most people lose money in the stock market. Most people lose money on their investments because they can't manage their own temperament. So look at great investors, learn from them. I think you're going to love it. I want to share this quote with you. This has helped me a lot in times of challenge, and it's called the Serenity Prayer is what they call it. But it says, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And that's Reinhold Niebuhr. Now that quote they use that in Alcoholics Anonymous and other sort of support groups. It's basically saying, help me to know, God, like what I can actually change in this situation and what I just need to accept, right? And the wisdom between the two. Because sometimes some things you can't change and some things you can. So I hope that's my hope for you, friend, is that you're able to do that. You're able to know what really can change and what you shouldn't change. If you made it this far and you're a Warren Buffett fan like me, you have to check out this other video that I did about Warren Buffett, his investment tips for real estate investors. Check that out. And then again, I wrote this amazing ebook on how to use inflation to your advantage, right? Not to be a slave or a victim of it, but how to use it to your advantage. I think you're going to love it. Take a look at it. It's got some really specific ways that you can use inflation to your advantage to make it your friend. Check it out down below in the description. And I want to see in the comments below, what are some things that you've noticed about Warren Buffett, or maybe even about your own temperament? Stick that in the comments. Look forward to seeing you on the next video.